A look outside the Beltway at the Texas state capitol in Austin. Senator Ted Cruz has told supporters this Super Tuesday will be, quote, the most important night of the campaign. His home state of Texas is the biggest prize and a must-win for the senator. Ted Cruz is live now in Springdale, Arkansas. Senator, welcome back.
Good morning, Chris. Good to be with you.
Senator, you used to say that you viewed Super Tuesday, and especially the races in the so-called SEC primary, as a, quote, firewall for your campaign. But according to the latest polls, the only states you're leading in are Arkansas and your home state of Texas. If you don't win in the South on Super Tuesday, aren't you in big trouble?
Well, Chris, what we've seen in these primaries is the first 4 states have narrowed the field. We started with 17 candidates. It's now much, much more narrow. And I think Super Tuesday will continue to do that. 65% of Republican primary voters don't think Donald Trump is the right candidate to go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton. He agrees with her on too many issues, and he's too vulnerable to lose in the general election. And the only campaign, the only candidate that has beaten Donald Trump, the only candidate that can beat Donald Trump is our campaign. And so on Super Tuesday, I hope and believe that conservatives will continue to coalesce behind our campaign, because if you're one of those 65% of Republicans that doesn't want to see Donald Trump as our nominee, doesn't want to see a blowout in November, then I ask you to come support us and stand with us, because that's the only way to stop Donald, is to stand together behind our campaign on Super Tuesday.
But there are some problems in terms of your support. You're running as a social conservative and as a political outsider, but I want to put up some, I would think, troubling numbers for you from the South Carolina exit polls. Trump beat you among evangelicals, self-described evangelicals, 34% to 26%. And among voters who say they want the next president to be from, quote, outside the political establishment, they went for Trump, 63% to 13%. Question, isn't Donald Trump beating you, Senator, at your own game?
Well, you know, a primary is an extended conversation, and Donald Trump has told us many, many times, in his own words, he says 7 months ago, he was a member of the establishment. You know, we saw the debate this past week, where Donald laid out he is a Washington deal maker. And it is Washington deals that have bankrupted this country. If you want more Washington deals, Donald Trump is your guy. That's why Harry Reid said Donald Trump was his favorite Republican, because Harry Reid said, Donald will cut deals with us, we can work with him. And, you know, we saw it in the debate when Donald Trump took me on and he said, listen, Ted, you've got to be willing to compromise on the Supreme Court. You've got to be willing to compromise on religious liberty. Let me tell you, if you're at home, I give you my word as president, I won't compromise away your religious liberty rights. I won't compromise away your Second Amendment rights. Donald Trump is telling us he's going to sit down with Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer and give away Justice Scalia's Supreme Court seat. And that means your Second Amendment rights are in jeopardy. And it's worth remembering, Chris, Donald Trump is someone who supported Bill Clinton's national ban on firearms for some of the most popular guns in America. I think we need a president who doesn't cut deals with Democrats to give away our rights, but rather stands with the working men and women of this country.
All right, I want to pick up on this question of the Supreme Court, because one of your big issues, one of your pitches to voters, is you say that you are a consistent conservative and that you would appoint a strong conservative to the court to replace succeed Justice Antonin Scalia. You also say that George W. Bush made a mistake when he named John Roberts to the court back in 2005. Take a look.
I wouldn't have nominated John Roberts, and indeed, Governor Bush pointed out why. It wasn't that the President Bushes wanted to appoint a liberal to the court. It's that it was the easier choice.
But, Senator, that's not what you said when, in fact, Roberts was nominated to the court back in 2005. I want to put up an article, a big article you wrote with the title, The Right Stuff. This is in 2005. Roberts nominated to the court. You wrote, John Roberts should be a quick confirm. As a jurist, Judge Roberts' approach will be that of his entire career, carefully, faithfully applying the Constitution and legal precedent. This was a long article, sir, that you wrote for the National Review, and you certainly seemed at the time, I know you said you wouldn't have nominated him, but you seemed at the time to be an enthusiastic supporter of John Roberts.
Well, Chris, it's true. Once George W. Bush nominated John Roberts, I supported the Republican president in his nomination. That was a mistake. In hindsight, that was a mistake. But let's be absolutely clear. I would not have nominated John Roberts. I would have nominated Mike Ludig, who was my former boss on the Court of Appeals. He was a proven conservative who had decades on the court defending conservative principles. And the difference was too many Republican presidents aren't willing to spend the capital to nominate and confirm a principled conservative. I have spent my entire life fighting to defend the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And when it comes to the Supreme Court, I will invest every bit of political capital to ensure that the Bill of Rights is there
but sir,
for
when
the
you
next
said,
generation.
When you wrote in that article that John Roberts would carefully and faithfully apply the Constitution and legal precedent, I mean, it sounds like you were saying more than just I'm falling in line with George Bush's nomination. You didn't have to write that article. You did.
It is correct. I supported the Republican nominee. But, you know, it's interesting, Chris. I noticed you didn't ask Donald Trump about his saying that his sister, who is a liberal, radical, pro-abortion Clinton appointee, would make a phenomenal Supreme Court justice. When it comes to Supreme Court justices, Donald has told us in the last debate he's going to cut deals. Let me give you another example. We saw in the last debate on immigration. When I was leading the fight against the Rubio-Schumer Gang of Eight amnesty bill, and together with millions of Americans, we defeated amnesty, Donald was funding the Gang of Eight. He gave over $50,000 to 5 members of the Gang of Eight. If you have spent 40
Didn't he also
years
give money to you, though, sir?
supporting open border Democrats,
Sir, didn't he
then
also
you
give money to you?
cannot claim that you're tough on illegal immigration. I'm sorry?
Didn't he also give money to you?
Oh, listen, $1,000 to my leadership PAC, which he tosses around like candy. But listen, he has supported open border Democrats for decades. He supported Jimmy Carter over Ronald Reagan. He supported John Kerry over George W. Bush. He's contributed to Hillary Clinton, to Chuck Schumer. This is a man, anyone who supports radical liberals like those, does not care about conservative Supreme Court justices, does not care about the Second Amendment, and doesn't care about securing the border, because those are the open border advocates who led the Gang of Eight. And indeed, you know, it was striking after the debate, Chris. Donald went on CNN and he was talking about his hotel down in Florida where they bring in foreign workers by the hundreds and they won't hire Americans. And he said, well, gosh, you can't find Americans to work as waiters and waitresses. How utterly ridiculous. There are millions of Americans who have worked and want to work as waiters and waitresses, especially in
Senator,
some swanky hotel in Palm Beach
Senator,
where people are tipping with $100.
I got one more question for you. And your campaign has been involved in a series of incidents that people are calling dirty tricks. I want to put up a list of them. In Iowa, the Cruz campaign sent out tweets saying Ben Carson was suspending his campaign. That was false. The campaign put out flyers accusing people of voting violations. That was false. In South Carolina, a Cruz super PAC attacked Trump over the Confederate flag, and your then communications director posted a link this week accusing Rubio of disrespecting the Bible. That was false. Question, do you take personal responsibility? This was your campaign, except for the super PAC. Do you take personal responsibility for this series of incidents, and what does it say about the culture of the campaign you're running?
Chris, every accusation you raised there is incorrect. I appreciate your reading the Donald Trump attack file on that.
Come on, sir.
Let me tell you, our campaign has been from the highest...
Wait a minute, sir.
Chris, let me answer. Please don't interrupt me.
You personally apologized to Ben Carson on a debate stage. You fired your communications director.
Chris,
don't say this is an
interrupt me.
oppo file on our part, sir.
Chris, please don't interrupt me. Our campaign from the beginning.
Please don't say that. Accuse me of something I didn't do.
Go ahead, Chris. Let me know when I'm allowed to answer.
Well, don't accuse me of doing something I didn't do. Two of those things, you apologized for one, and you fired your communications director. Don't say this is the oppo file.
Chris, our campaign from the beginning has been the highest level of integrity. When others have engaged in personal attacks and insults, we don't respond in kind. And, you know, it was striking. You just had Donald Trump on the air. You didn't ask him about the fact that he sent out a fabricated quote from Tom Coburn impugning my integrity. Tom Coburn, Senator Coburn, came out and said it was an utter fabrication, and yet Donald continued repeating what he knew to be false. You didn't ask Donald Trump about the robocalls that went out from a white supremacist group supporting Donald Trump, telling people do not vote for a Cuban, vote for Donald Trump. You know, when it comes to telling the truth and not telling the truth, you didn't ask Donald Trump about the fact that in the last debate, I asked him, true or false, you support socialized medicine, the government paying for your health care. He said false. and it's directly contrary to what he said for 20 years on the record. Listen, Chris, the facts matter. I understand that there are folks that don't want to focus on the facts, but listen, the voters care about the truth. They care about Donald
Senator
Trump's
Cruz,
record of giving Democrats.
Senator
Yes.
Cruz, we're flat out of time. First of all, I don't think anybody's going to think I did an easy interview with Donald Trump. I asked him about plenty of things. If you want to ask him those questions, guess what? You'll get the opportunity at the Fox debate on Thursday. Thank you. Thanks for making time for us on this very busy weekend, sir.